Hello, friends. This is John Finnegan with Uncommon Leadership, and I'm here with an old friend of 25 years whose name is Robert White. Robert, welcome.
Oh, it's great to be with you, John.
I'm glad we have this opportunity together. So, Robert, you have been in the personal development leadership space for more than 30 years. In fact, you were one of the leaders and founders of that industry. Can you talk a little bit about that in the beginning to kind of to have a level setter for us?
I think people that have been somewhat successful in the personal growth space do so based on a personal experience, and mine, that's certainly true for me. I was in my late 20s. I had a little sales business. My life was a mess, to do the summary. I had been married and divorced, felt very guilty about that. I had 3 heart attacks. I was told that I would not live past 35, and that weighed heavily on me. I think I've learned since then that male vitality is so very important to us. Mm-hmm. Much more so than with women, interestingly. And I was late on payroll. My business was a mess. Of course, I was pretending everything was fine. A friend of mine went out to California, living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at that time, and went through one of the early human potential movement seminars. He came back, his business got better, his personal life got better, his marriage got better. And I witnessed that while I was, and he's telling me I should go do this seminar. And I'm saying, no, I'm fine. And I finally did it. My life changed, John. All these years later, it sounds like a cliche, but a lot of what I've done in business has really been sourced by that 4-day experience back there at 27 years old. So that's my background. I then, that business tripled in size the following year, even though not one word was said about money in the seminar. It went up 10 times the following year. And I got the opportunity to go to New York City and take over the sales operations of a major company. Made a lot of money, had a lot of fun. And one of the ways that fueled that income and fun was I started enrolling people into that course. It was called Mind Dynamics. And I didn't get paid for doing it. I didn't know anything about the company. I just knew that if I sent one of my salespeople to that training, they came back and performed better. They came back and there was less drama in their life. There was more accountability in their life, which had a big impact, of course, on salespeople and on the relationship with me, the sales manager. So that company, Mind Dynamics, found out about me because I enrolled over 400 people in the training. And one day I got a phone call from the founder and chairman of that company. I didn't even know his name. He introduced himself, we chatted a bit, and then he said, would you be willing to come out to California and meet me? And I thought, great, I'll do that. And flew out there, and 10 days later, I was president of Mind Dynamics, running the business side of their business. I knew almost nothing about the seminar except that it worked for me and for many, many other people in my world, my family, my friends, and all of these salespeople. And it gave me the opportunity, the first 2 years of straightening out their business side of their business in the domestic market, and then setting up 5 foreign subsidiaries. So as a 30-year-old, I got to travel the world, meet some really fascinating people, make all kinds of mistakes, learn from them, hopefully a bit. And so I spent 4 years with Mind Dynamics. That's my only time working for someone else. And it was just incredibly rewarding in every possible way. And then one of the owners of that company died in a plane crash. The chairman was heartbroken, frankly, that his friend had died, and chose that as an opportunity to leave. So I ended up working for a probate judge, no fun, and quit and started a company called LifeSpring. Later sold that company, moved to Asia, created ARC International. That's my history. I get tremendous pleasure out of enrolling people in those trainings, training trainers, working with the organization, kind of being the back of the room guy. But on the corporate side, I enjoy being in front of the room, working with corporate executives, entrepreneurs, owners on completing their past, on getting better at telling the truth about current reality, and about really choosing an extraordinary future.
One of the words that jumped out at me this time in your telling of that story was the word pretending. And I'm trying to think back, where does that come from, especially for us? It is the opposite of truth, that we pretend everything's okay. Why do we do that?
Well, it's a shortcut. Adopting an image that's not entirely true is a shortcut, and a lot of it's, and I'm not a professional therapist, but I play one on TV. It's an old line, right?
Right.
Look, we adopt this image because it gets approval, generally. That's generally the reason. Or we do it for survival. There are a lot of reasons why we adopt an image. Mm-hmm. When I was living in Japan, I had a condominium in, I guess I had several, but one of them was in a high rise in Honolulu in Hawaii. That's a closer getaway than flying to the West Coast. And yes, plus it's an absolutely lovely place. My daughter Megan was about 2.5 years old. And she is today, let us say it in a hopefully polite way, verbal. Mouthy would be a different term. You never didn't know how Megan was thinking and feeling then and now, even at 2.5. So we're up on one of the high floors. We're going to go down to the swimming pool. You put on your swimming suit, you put on a wrap or something, and you go to the pool. So we're on the elevator, and the door opens, and a woman gets on the elevator, and she's elderly, and she's wearing her swimming suit and a little top over that. Megan today is 4'11". She lies and pretends she's 5 feet, but she was 4'11", and so at 2.5, she was really tiny. And so what's she looking at? She's looking at this woman's legs. She's kind of knee height with this woman, and she says to me, she grabs my arm and tugs on it. And she says, "Daddy, this woman has blue lines on her leg." Now, any parent has been in that spot, right?
Yeah,
where the kid embarrasses you, and by the way, penetrates your image as the perfect dad. Right. But so I don't remember what I said exactly to her, but probably, hush, Megan, and smile at the woman, right? And then the woman says, "But Daddy, her legs look like your highway map." The blue
it kept
lines. Going. She had fairly, prominent veins, and then I apologized to the woman. All right, so that's just a little thing that happens. And in sharing that story with parents, they all have a story like that, where the kid embarrasses them. So first of all, that's about image, your image as the perfect parent, but your kid embarrasses you. But how about the effect on Megan? I basically, in front of her, told her to lie, to be quiet, to not share her truth. And that might seem like a goofy little example, but things like that are what form our image and what forms our way of being, because we are social animals. We want approval. We want to be okay in society. So we do all kinds of things to make ourselves look good. The classic one now is the Facebook profile, where everything is great in your life.
Sure.
And that's what, that's, at least if you just watched Facebook, you would think everything is great in your life.
Sure.
I've had the recent experience of not great in my life. And I took a deep breath and put it on Facebook. and shared it because I want to grow ever closer to being authentic personally, even when it's kind of painful. And but if the classic way of saying it is, do we own our image or does it own us? I think a little bit of image work can be a good thing, particularly given how sensitive everybody is to social media and to appearances at work, at church, in our sports activities in every way. Probably good to pay a little bit of attention to that, but own it. Know what you're doing when you do it, and to grow ever closer to being the person that God put us here on earth to be. There's 7 billion unique individuals on this planet. I think the challenge is to be that individual.
What you were attracted to Asia early in your career? Is that a fair statement?
Not exactly. It certainly became an attraction, but when I was president of Mind Dynamics, we launched businesses. I launched businesses in Copenhagen, Munich, Rome, London. I'm missing. Australia, England. Right. So, we said yes to a lot of places and had a great business. The only country that I said no to was Japan. I went there for a week. I had never been in such a strange place. First, the language is backwards. And expenses were insanely high for a training company because we use a lot of space.
Yes.
And space in Japan is definitely at a premium. It was then and it is today. And we were busy, and I thought it's going to be a distraction. It's too expensive. And so I said no. And then for a couple of years with Mind Dynamics, and then when I started LifeSpring, the people from Japan called me every month, at least once, and said, please bring this training to Japan. And when I sold LifeSpring, I sold it to the staff for nothing down and forever to pay. It's an old line, right? And the conclusion to that, of course, is they took longer than forever to pay. And that was true. That was also true. But I had put every penny that I had into LifeSpring. And so now I'm unemployed, I'm broke, I've got a family, I've got a mortgage. And they called me from Japan. They said, we're going to change our offer. Come for 90 days. Set up a program and you can leave and we will pay you for 1 year. So, later on, because we teach a lot about purpose and vision and following your dream and all of that stuff. Sure. And people would say, well, did you have this big vision and coming to Japan? I said, no, I needed a job. I needed to pay my mortgage, take care of my children. And, but that 90 days turned into the first day of about 12 years. And a relationship with Asia. We became the largest training company in Asia with 7 training centers in Japan, 2 in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Guangzhou, Sydney, Seoul, Manila. We were all over Asia. And I grew to really love Asian culture. And I love that they want to work hard. They want to take care of their families. Right. It's pretty similar to everybody worldwide. And it's an interesting place. I'm a curious person. So, I'm now the non-executive chairman of a new Malaysian training company and looking forward to developing that. So it's been a wonderful experience. It's a long trip. That's true. That hop across the Pacific that I've made so many times gave me a lot of airline miles, but it's a little hard on this aging body.
Yeah, not everyone knows that, up until the start of the pandemic, you spent 6 years, most recently, in China. And then, of course, the pandemic and some changing laws caused you to transition again. talk about that if you would, please, because I remember having drinks with you before you made that trip. I mean, it was just prior to that move, and it was unbelievable what you achieved during that period of time. I love seeing the images and the videos. Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Well, I added it up recently. I've spent 23 years of my adult life, working life in Asia, first in Japan, then in Hong Kong, and then in mainland China. And so I've been there a lot. And then even when I've been back in the U.S., I'm wired to the people, the businesses, the progress, the politics, everything that's going on in Asia. So it's been a huge part of my life. And after, John, I mean, you know this story. I kind of retired at age 46. I moved to Aspen, built the big house, the 14,500 square foot house, bought the jet, settled in, had remarried, had 2 birth children and 2 adopted special needs kids, skied 80 days a year, traveled with the Lake John Denver for 6 months. I had a wonderful time in Aspen, and I lost control of my business.
Right.
We have the kind of business where all of your assets walk out the door every night at 5 or 6 o'clock, and they walked out one night and didn't come back.
Right.
And so lots of learning about that from me, and a huge failure. So I pulled all of those. I mean, I fired 240 people. I closed 15 offices. It was not a fun experience.
Right.
At the same time, my oldest son was very ill, and I was running back and forth to New York, dealing with his illness and supporting him. And people are saying, come back to Asia, come back to Asia. We want you here. And I said, no. And I think part of it was real in terms of wanting to be close to my son. But part of it was ego, was image. I had been the hugely successful guy who then had a huge public failure. Now, we need a couch and a therapist to work through that instead of just this video camera. But I didn't go. And then 7 years ago, or 8 years ago now, a former trainer of mine called me and said, I need your help. I've been doing these contract trainings in Kazakhstan, and they have blackballed me. I can't get a visa, can't get a renewal of my visa. And I've got 80 people waiting for me, and will you please go and do this training? And I've thought about that a lot, because it turned out to be a real turning point in my life, is that I wondered, I hadn't done that, what I call a basic training, for more than 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I wondered, can I do it? Do I still have it in me to do it?
Yeah.
And then part of it was just curiosity. I'd never been to Kazakhstan. I had to go on Google Maps and find out where it was. A fascinating place, by the way. And
all of the stands.
All the stands, Kyrgyzstan and Pakistan and Kazakhstan. So I had a very successful experience. They contracted with me to do 5 more trainings. Mm-hmm. And so it was just a great experience. And all of those years before that, John, I did not enjoy doing trainings myself. Mm-hmm. In the early days of my company, of course, you have to do everything, and I did everything. But as quickly as possible, I hired trainers and trained them to do our specific work. And my pleasure came from being in the back of the room, knowing that my work had put those butts in the seats, knowing that I trained that trainer, that I put this whole thing together. That I got incredible pleasure from that. And I'm a severe introvert, on all of those tests. Plus, I know in my own experience of myself, I'm very happy going back to my room and listening to music or watching Romanian soccer on ESPN2. That's me. And our trainers, these incredibly talented people, they love being in front of the room. They love the applause. They love the whole thing.
Right.
But it was not me. And yet, after 20 years of not doing that front of the room work, I go off to Kazakhstan, and I have an experience that is, I don't have words to describe. I fell in love with the people, with what I was doing. My results from that training were kind of off the chart good. And I realized that in that 20 years, I had changed, that I had been humbled, for one thing. I had accomplished everything I ever dreamed of in terms of material success and fun. But mostly, and then with the failure, particularly failure and a divorce, another divorce, I had been humbled. And I had been made to really work on myself and take a look at who I really am, and what do I want to contribute in the world? Why did God put me here, this unique animal named Robert? And that showed up in the classroom. And I was, I'm not sure the exact word, but more intimate with the students. I was more connected to them, to their lives, their struggles, their wins, everything about them. And I just loved it. So that was a big turning point for me, big change personally. And that led to China, by the way, so to answer your question. Then somebody said, somebody said, the word got out. Robert's back in the game, was how it was expressed. And somebody said, will you come to Beijing and work with owners of training companies? And by that time, over 3,000 Chinese had stolen our stuff and started training businesses in China. Yeah. And by the way, to them, that's not a violation at all. That's just what you do. Right. You copy things. Right. By the time I got to China, that 3,000 was down to 800. They find out the business is not as easy as they thought it was going to be. Right. So I started work. And then I looked at, my son had recovered. All of my children were adults. Everybody's doing fine. I thought, one more adventure. So I moved to Hong Kong. Yeah.
And you made it into a terrific adventure. I think it's something to really be proud of. Could you talk a little bit about how the content of your trainings came together and developed over time? Because it has gotten better. You talked about it from a personal perspective, where you became more connected to the people in the audience, and I know and have experienced that your training is experiential, but there is a certain content that came together for you early, and then I assume transformed over time. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, well, it did in terms of where it's applied. The basics are the same as they were 30 years ago. Okay. Frankly, I'm often introduced as some kind of a grandfather of the human potential movement. I am not that. What I've been very good at is promoting it and engaging the maximum number of people in it. We now have, in between my three companies, 1,300,000 graduates. Yeah. So that's been my thing, is exposing people to these wonderful experiences. But there are people that came before me in terms of the content of the personal growth trainings. The piece that I would take some acknowledgement for is the integration, the translation and integration of our work into a corporate setting, into a business setting. Which of course is what I've been, I was in front of more than 20,000 people during the 6 years in China. And the message is all about leadership, and it's about creating organizations that are focused and aligned and committed, but using the experiential tools to get people to that place, so that it's not just academic learning, it is an experience they never forget, and that they can live into in running their organizations.
What's different about the personal training versus the corporate training? Focus, alignment, and commitment, but that can hold true for the individual as well. How is it different for the corporation?
What's different is that you are going through the training with your peers, with people that you see every day. So first of all, it's a little bit more delicate to do high impact experiential learning with people that you work with every day. It's not an anonymous kind of thing. You're going to be showing up at the coffee machine, or in Asia, the tea machine, the next morning after the training. And so there's a difference there. A lot of it is about application, excuse me. So in the general public program, and it's the structure of my book, and it was the name of our company, was ARC, A-R-C, Awareness, Responsibility, Communication. So in the personal growth trainings, that's our focus, waking people up, starting to really notice, becoming more aware, and then taking personal responsibility for your life instead of jumping into this victim culture that we've created. And then finally, developing a mastery level of communication, including listening, writing, speaking, body language, every form of communication. And for a general public program, if people make progress in those three areas, their life will transform. When we've got a lot of experiences that say that that's true. In business, you have to be able to create a result, and a very specific business result. So that changes the context of the training material. And so that's why I mentioned the focus, alignment, and commitment piece, because in my own organization, that's where I learned that. I learned that if you assume that everybody in your company is focused in the same direction you are, and on the same things that you are, and on the same priorities, you assume that you're headed for trouble. Because they aren't. They're distracted a million ways from Sunday. And so that's important, getting people to focus on what they're up to this 90-day period, this 1 year period, and on the issues and opportunities that organizations have. And then finally, alignment. Today there are, unfortunately, a number of people that are just working for a paycheck. If that's true in your company, you're in big trouble. Things are moving too fast. There's too much change. There's too much competition. You better have people that are aligned to the purpose, vision, and values of your company. And if you want to attract the best and brightest young people, they now have the ability online to find out what your culture is, to find out what your purpose, vision, and values, and are you living it? So we work a lot on that. I do it on my mentoring practice, but also in leadership training. And then finally, commitment. And and by the way, that's the overlap to the personal growth program, is really the strongest overlap is around commitment. Having a life of no excuses, of no stories of why you're not getting what you say, it's not doing what you say you're going to do, and not getting what you say you want. So that piece is, there's a huge amount of overlap between the personal and the organizational trainings.
I've found it to be fascinating over the last couple of years during the pandemic, where we're doing this Zoom thing, and so the culture of the organization has changed, and I paid particular attention to Google, Apple, and the large IT firms and seeing that these powerful CEOs are having an amazing struggle in getting people to come back to work. And so their employees have more choice today than ever before. And so things are different today. What has your experience been in this environment?
One of the things I learned when my business failed was that when the economy turned down in Asia, I could have easily said, well, the problem was the economy. No, the problem was that I had problems in my own organization that were revealed when the economy turned down. They were hidden by our growth and by our success. So the way that I look at this, what do they call it? The mass resignations, the
Right.
non-returning, all of that stuff, is that what happened with the pandemic, with people working from home, just revealed problems that were there before the pandemic.
That's right.
People didn't want to be there. They didn't want to be at the company if they were really telling the truth. Right. They were, in fact, working for a paycheck or for ego or for stasis. They weren't happy, but they weren't motivated to change. And then everything in the culture changed. Not everything, but many things changed.
Right.
And people got a little bit more honest, I think, with themselves and about the companies that they were in. Look, I've been wandering around the world, walking into business offices all of my life. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen a poster on the wall or a slogan on a coffee cup or a big binder full of stuff that Boston Consulting Group or McKinsey or somebody put together. And then when you dig into the organization, you find they're nowhere near living all of those things that are on that poster, on that coffee cup, or in that binder. And people know that. They might not have the words, they might not be able to articulate it, but they can feel it. And you hear these jokes about, oh no, it's Monday again. Well, I've never said that in my life. And the organizations that I work with, they can't wait to get to work on Monday.
Right.
Because they're clear about the purpose of their work. They're clear about the vision that they're moving toward. They're clear how it fits with their personal reason for being, not just doing.
Right.
And by the way, that's a big part of my life education in Asia, is to pay more attention to your being, not to be this Western doing machine that we've often become. And I've been part of that, and part of that growth. I'm paying more attention to my feelings, paying more attention to how I'm showing up in the world, not just my doing machine. I mean, I'm a hard worker, thank you, Margaret White. That's my mom. She had a lot of bad examples, but boy, she was a good example of hard work. And I've worked hard, but it's a difference between working hard just because you have a belief about that versus working hard because you're passionately committed to some vision that you have chosen.
Right.
So I think that some of the problems that business people are facing today, they were there before, but now they've been surfaced. So the leader can either be a victim of all of that, complain about it, and drink a little more or take more drugs or distract himself or herself in various ways, or you can step up to it and go, the definition of culture that I like is the simple one, which is the way things are done around here. Well, if a business person, organizational person, nonprofit, if they can take a look at the way things are done around here and tell the truth about that, the human mind is this incredible thing. We can fix stuff.
Right.
We can shift. We are not programmed animals, limited. We can create something new. And that's the opportunity that business people and nonprofit people and government people have today, is to create something new and something better. So I'm excited about participating in that.
An important part of our work, though, is to go into an organization, to work with a leadership team, and to draw upon our experiences and make observations. But do you have a formal way of assessing what's going on in an organization, or is it done? Do you have a structure to it that works for you?
There is an underlying structure, but look, if I'm going to add value, which is always my goal, it's going to be by utilizing what is unique about me. So an example of that is, I know your background with IBM, you have a really great engineering mind. I mean, I've known you a long time. You're very organized, you're very structured, and you look at things through that kind of a filter. My filter is, what am I noticing?
Mm-hmm.
And most colloquially, is that a word? I follow my gut when I'm with people, but I'm a good listener, and people reveal a lot in their language. They reveal a lot in the way they're showing up physically. Certainly I'm looking at results, but I'm trying to bring all of that together to see if I can be a resource. Mm-hmm. And our structure in the personal growth trainings and in the corporate work is around these three activities. Number one is completing your past. And I'll talk just about organizations. I mean, we could talk about individuals too, but with individuals, it's dealing with blame, shame, regret, guilt, and past success. Mm-hmm. With companies, it's often dealing with the past in terms of the way we've always done things. Mm-hmm. That's the strongest one. Now, there might be in the individuals, particularly in an executive team, there might be either individually or interpersonally blame, shame, regret, guilt, betrayal. By the way, I've been asking business audiences two questions. I've come to believe that I can build trust in an audience pretty quickly. Yes. And I think part of that's gray hair, and part of that's life experience, and sure, part of that's me being who I am. So I've been asking these two questions, and frankly, John, they came because I had the questions personally. So the first question, so I've asked 20,000 people in the last 6 years these two questions. First one is, have you ever been betrayed, either personally or in business? What do you think the percentage of hands that go up there? This is an audience. I haven't done any work with them, but let's say I've spent an hour with them. So there's some trust that's been built, whatever a level. And I say, how many of you have been betrayed, either personally or in business? How many hands do you think go up? What percentage of the audience? It's usually groups.
Yeah, my guess is very high, like 90%.
Yeah, it's 100. Mm-hmm. If a hand is not up, it's just because I didn't notice it. So maybe it's 98%. Mm-hmm. The other question is, how many of you are estranged from at least one person in your family? 70%. Now, I started asking those questions because I was curious about some things going on in my life around betrayal and estrangement. And but then I started thinking about, well, what does that mean? Well, for me, and then also I did some research about 10 years ago, working with the Rockefeller family in New York. We were going to do a program for people in transition. Mm-hmm. There was this period of time in the US where so many 50-plus-year-old, mostly men, but a few women, were being retired, not voluntarily. Mm-hmm. They were being laid off or fired. Mm-hmm. And the word was they're too old to get another high-paying job. Mm-hmm. We're talking about people strictly that were making $500,000 a year or more. Mm-hmm. And the learning about that was that their personal life was a mess, and that was being translated into their companies. Mm-hmm. They weren't fully available, even though they were being paid, a very large amount of money and had a lot of benefits and a great image and all that stuff. But if you are carrying around stuff from the past, that blame, shame, regret, guilt, and your past success, mm-hmm. if that's where your attention is, you are not going to be present to today's challenges, mm-hmm. and to the people that you are leading. So a lot of what we do is around completing that past, taking the negative energy off of those events that do happen in our lives. What we do if we're ambitious business people and something bad happens in our personal life, we stuff it. We find some way to compartmentalize it because we're ambitious. Uh-huh. And also,
oftentimes we're told to do that.
That we're told, mm-hmm. Absolutely. Get over it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, get over it, man. Mm-hmm. Get drunk and come back to work tomorrow. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Get a therapist. I'm not going to introduce you to one. I'm not going to pay for it, but get it handled. And we compartmentalize. We become actually quite good at that. Mm-hmm. But it's there, and I can point to specifics about how it affects your physical health, which means your availability to do your job. It's going to affect your hiring, who you hire, and how you see people. Mm-hmm. You sit down with this person that has been recommended to you, and you're thinking about hiring them, and then you're thinking about the person that betrayed you 5 years ago, subconsciously, but it's there. Mm-hmm. It will affect how you fire, how you get rid of non-performers.
Right.
It'll cause you to keep people that aren't performing out of guilt, that you're affecting their life negatively and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So our first step in dealing with whether I'm dealing with an individual leader or with a team is completing their past, letting go of these surfacing and letting go of these things that have happened. The second piece is learning to better tell the truth about current reality. Mm-hmm. And the Buddhists call this developing a selfless regard for reality, which is kind of a clever way of saying it, I think, and a little bit deeper than just telling the truth about reality. Right. It's to get yourself out of the way. And that's back to that image stuff. There's all these defense mechanisms that we have to not tell the truth about what's right in front of us, about why we're losing people. Mm-hmm. Why are young people joining our company and leaving after a year or two? Mm-hmm. Why are people only giving 50, 60% of the effort? And we just avoid it. Mm-hmm. We don't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. So you've got to learn to tell the truth about what's in front of you if you're going to make any changes. And we work on that in terms of how you show up personally, what you tolerate in your workforce, and so that it's just getting real. If you've done those two things, if you've done a little work on completing the past, which is tremendously refreshing and freeing, and energy just explodes when you do that. Right. And if you're telling the truth about what declining sales or declining margins or losing people, or also telling the truth about the things that are working, about that person that's 4 levels down from you, who's doing more of a leadership job than 2 levels above him or her. And every organization has that. That's part of telling the truth, by the way, about who's really the hot performers in an organization. Mm-hmm. If you've done those two things, you've created a space for a future freely chosen, not one to please the market, not one to please your parents, not one to please the culture, but one that you freely choose, that your team freely chooses. Mm-hmm. And if you freely choose it, that's when you get this magic term, buy in. I hear that word thrown around like litter, and people don't know what it means. But that's that commitment thing, right? That people believe in what they're doing. They believe in what the company is doing, the organization's doing. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're up to.
So the first was completing your past. The second was learning to tell the truth about reality. Is the third a future freely chosen, or is?
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right.
And the word vision is often, again, thrown around, or mission, and all kinds of words like that. What we're talking about is a compelling vision. And compelling means that, an example would be somebody says, well, I know what we're up to here. Our vision is to be $100 million company. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, but that's not going to engage anybody other than maybe you, if you're the owner. Money doesn't inspire people.
Right.
So your vision has to be compelling, has to draw people in. Vendors, suppliers, certainly your team, future customers. Your vision better inspire something know, and so that's a future freely chosen.
Also, when you were referring to speaking to corporate groups, I thought you said you asked 3 questions. Maybe it was 2. You talked about,
2.
Okay, have you ever been betrayed, and how many of you are estranged from at least one person in your life? That's
yes.
a great way to start. It's kind of shock and awe with respect to your audience when you ask those kinds of penetrating personal questions, right? Because so often in the workplace, we don't get personal. We choose not to be.
Well, we're trained not to be.
That's a better way to say it.
I mean, I started with Megan, right? When I basically recommended that she lie to that woman who had the varicose veins, you know, and all of us have been socialized to lie. And they're, you know, if you say, well, do you lie? Most people say, no, I don't. And within about 18 seconds, I can point out to them that they do. You know, because we've been trained to lie.
Right.
We've been trained to avoid reality, you know, to do the happy talk. Again, that complaint about Facebook, you know, that people only put on there what is pleasant and makes them look good and sound good, like they have the perfect family and the perfect life is travel and eating out and going to the concert and all of that stuff, right? So we're kind of in a pattern that doesn't serve us, and it does show up in organizations.
I have personally seen you be a magnet to other people through your authenticity, you know, by revealing things about yourself that are not necessarily pleasant, and by doing so, people are drawn to you. That's what I've observed in you, Robert White.
Look, I highly recommend, well, thank you, first of all, because I do work on that and I've efforted toward it. And it was not always true that I would do that. I was an extremely private person for the first half of my life.
Right.
And still accomplished a lot because I was driven and, you know, reasonably smart, I think.
Right.
And worked hard.
Right.
And a lot of luck, you know, just a tremendous blessings of good fortune or God's grace or however you want to explain it.
Right.
For everyone, I highly recommend, this is the easiest recommendation ever. I recommend a video on YouTube that's been seen by over 50 million people. 50 million people, views. And that's Brene Brown talking about vulnerability. And because she does it with her own example, she does it with both wit and wisdom. I mean, she's a super smart, well-educated woman who does very good research.
Right.
But she is the primary research. She studies herself, right, her own reluctance to be vulnerable. But that video, you know, if people really got that, I think all of life would just be a whole lot better if people were living what she teaches. So on one side, I've been schooling myself, John, to not deflect praise. So I will acknowledge I've really worked on myself around vulnerability, and while I'm not 100% all the time on it, I think I'm a lot better. But if somebody wants a quick education, you know, the 18 minutes of a TED Talk,
right,
go look up Brene Brown, Brene,
right,
Brown, and you'll find out about vulnerability. And then it's a choice. Am I going to take that little step of being more self-revealing, more open and honest with people? And I'm not talking about the drama queen thing, you know, let me tell you all my problems and what happened to me. I'm pretty strategic in what I reveal, frankly. I'm still careful. But if I feel like I'm going over the line, it probably means I should do it. Because my fear is stopping me. That's an old story, but it's somewhat true.
where are you headed now in your career? What is your goal in the months and years ahead?
We do a lot of work on purpose, and our statement in our work is that getting clear about your purpose is more important than your vision. By the way, we think, where do you come from? Why are you here on this planet? You're this unique one of 7 billion people. So why are you here? We're doing a lot of work on that. And we've developed 4 levels of purpose. By the way, they're all equally valuable. They're just different. So the most basic one is survival. We've got to handle survival before we can handle anything else. And we tend to forget that in Western societies, but food, clothing, and shelter is pretty important. Mm-hmm. So get that handled. The second level is maintenance, that you have figured out a way to handle survival and some higher ordered needs on a routine level. Maybe it's a job or a business, it's a family that supports you, all kinds of things like that. It's having most of life somewhat handled. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's maintenance. The third level, which confuses people, I know, is leisure. Mm-hmm. So yes, that does include laying on the beach in Hawaii, or playing pickleball, I guess is the latest fun thing.
Yes.
But what we're talking about in terms of levels of purpose is that your entire life becomes a life of play. Your work is play. Mm-hmm. Monday morning is delightful. It's not something you avoid. No. So that's third level. And the fourth level is contribution. So in terms of my life and whatever it is I've learned, the experiences I've had, my primary focus today is on contribution. Mm-hmm. I know that God put me here for a specific reason. I recall vividly, waking up in that huge house in Aspen with everything on my bucket list and tons of things that I didn't even put on my bucket list had been accomplished. And I'd wake up most mornings thinking, God put me here for something that's not complete. It's like a vague kind of dis-ease, mm-hmm. That everything's wonderful around me. I'm surrounded by these wonderful children. I'm skiing 80 days a year. I'm traveling all over the world. I'm on 6 nonprofit boards. Wow. And then I'm waking up going, oh, God's not finished with me yet. Mm-hmm. So, and the answer to that is contribution. In my book, Living an Extraordinary Life, I think the title's pretty good. It's provocative, that you don't want to just live a good life, you want an extraordinary life. Mm-hmm. But the key is it's really the subtitle, which is, about your potential for success, but also for joy and fulfillment. And so I'm working on that personally. I want to make sure that my life is producing joy and fulfillment. I met this wonderful woman, Cheryl Lynn, who's doing this project called the Chair of Joy. And she talks a lot there's a lot of science that if you can be coming from an energy of joy, your accomplishment's going to be off the chart. Mm-hmm. And so, but her little gimmick on it, that sounds like I'm diminishing it. Yeah. Her way of getting attention is she's got this chair, but what she encourages me and you to do is to find a chair where when stress hits, and it will hit us on a daily basis because of the incredible rapid changes taking place, that you go sit in your chair, whatever chair you don't have to sit in her fancy chair. You can sit, it can be a bench somewhere, but some place that you identify as a place where you can take a few deep breaths, mm-hmm. remember moments of great joy, and allow them to fill you and fill your conscious being, and then go back to your life. Mm-hmm. It makes a huge difference. So I'm focusing on joy. I'm focusing on fulfillment. on doing what I think I was put on earth to do. And but ultimately, the metric is contribution. Mm-hmm. Are the people that I'm working with on both a business and a personal level, is their life getting better? Are they living the life they were born to live? Are they using all of these? I mean, I'm blessed to work with these incredibly smart people, hardworking people, creative people. These people running companies are amazing, amazing people. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to bring a little more ease to their success.
Right.
And more joy in what they're doing and the people around them, you know, that they love, to get them to the point where they realize that they love what they do. They love the people they're doing it with. They're being well compensated, and they've got time for things other than work. You know, that's a little broader right. for most people, right. Unfortunately. But that's, I think that's why I'm here on the planet.
How can people get in touch with you? What is the best way to connect with Robert White?
They, extraordinarypeople.com is the best way. Mm-hmm. Robert at extraordinarypeople.com. Email me. I offer a 30-minute free, no obligation consultation, and where we work on some issue together and get to know each other right. in a kind of focused way and find out if we should be working together. Mm-hmm. But even if not, you know, I like making friends at this point in my life, are increasingly important to me.
Yeah.
You know, I encourage people to buy my book. It's been valuable to many, many people.
Right.
You can get it on my website, extraordinarypeople.com, or on Amazon, Kindle, and all that stuff.
Right.
So reach out. Let's connect. Let's have some fun together.
Robert, it has been a real gift, not just today, but to have gotten to know you over all of these years. And you've changed my life profoundly. And I could not be more grateful. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, this is John Finnegan here with Robert White. This is Uncommon Leadership. Until next time, we'll see you again.